We're the third pack releasing in the tank replica project. We are returning to Germany because this pack has just so many vehicles and we want to just get them out there. And as that, we're just gonna go straight into it by a Hetzer made by Muschet. And for the people that actually don't know the Hetzer, it's a tiny little tank destroyer that was modified from the Panzer 38T, or actually like a Czechoslovakian design, but it was horribly outdated. And that said, there was still like a lot of them in stock by the Germans, and they wanted to just get like a way of making them viable again. So they changed out the gun, like in the entire superstructure, to fit a 75mm gun instead of the turreted 37mm gun that they had at first. And it's actually very mobile and very usable in terms of like mobility here. The armor is of course realistic, as is with almost all the builds in the packs. And it'll serve you well in these little like hold down setups. Of course, it's not the most mobile, and it does suffer from being a tank destroyer in a game where turret tanks are pretty much meta. But that's alright. It's not too much of a problem. It's still a lot of fun to try this thing out or fight it after getting through that thick front plate. Good luck getting through that. We're going to move on to the next build, which is going to be a Marder III Model M, which is basically, in a way, the precursor of the Panzer III project, the Hetzer project, because this is on the base of a chassis of a Panzer II, where they removed the turret and put a casemate in the back, which in reality would be open top, but of course that is not yet a thing with sprockets. And they just stamped another long 75mm anti-tank gun in there. And these are all about being just mobile artillery. And that's like the most important part about these. The like tank destroyer role is only secondary to the fact that they're mobile artillery. And again, it's a pretty mobile tank. Actually capable of crossing these trenches, funny enough. And again, packing that long 75mm gun, they all have pretty much the same penetration among these tanks. And now we're gonna go over to a Panzer II, but it's the L variant, which actually doesn't quite fit in terms of like the size of the stuff here. So this one actually can only be used when cheats are enabled. But it's a very mobile tank with a 20mm autocannon. And well, it doesn't fire as fast in Sprocket as it does in real life. That's of course because autocannons aren't quite a thing in this game yet. And they didn't want to have put in the heuristic values. But this one should actually be usable in other war eras. It is not possible to use right now in this era yet. But it is a very, very mobile tank, just like it was in real life, where it was a late war modification, well, not entirely modification, more like a complete redesign of the Panzer II. Entirely meant to just like be a reconnaissance tank above anything else. And yeah, it will be a light tank in here. And with that, we're going to move on over to the Panzer IIIs, where we got 3 models, all made by Muschet again. The Panzer II was, by the way, made by Luca GMR. So all the Panzer IIIs have this little frontal armor on the turret and hull. And they're all, like, again, very similar in models in a way or another. But this one is actually lacking the side skirts of the later models. Packing a long 50mm gun, this one was actually the workhorse of Germany in the early stages of the war, until it was replaced by the upgunned long 75 Panzer IV. And it is a quite decent tank, to be honest. It's not the most well protected, it's not the most mobile, but it was just cheap to design in large numbers. And that is often the most important thing when it comes to producing tanks in World War II, is the numbers you can produce them in. Because this one is actually not that inferior to a T-34 or a Sherman. But they did actually end up modifying them a few times, including a Panzer L with a longer 50mm gun. Still not having the side skirts though. That's alright. So long 50mm gun made it much more useful against stuff like the T-34. But still, it would be eventually replaced by that Panzer IV. Other than that, it's the same chassis as on the MJ model. But after it did get replaced, they end up going for the Panzer III N, where they replaced the 50mm gun with a 75mm howitzer that was meant for infantry support. And yeah, that's this design right here, where it fires APHE more than anything else. And the explosions do be pretty big, to be honest. And it's a very neat little tank right here. This one will not give you nearly as much trouble as the long 50mm, because the gun is just so much lower velocity, it doesn't go to nearly as much armor, and of course the fact that it's going to be firing APHE for the most time. But that shouldn't be too much of a thing. Again, these are all replica tanks, they're not focused on their actual competitive strength inside of Sprocket itself. They're meant to be more or less realistic. With that, we are gonna move on to the Panzer IV-G, again made by Luca GMR. And this is the first Panzer IV I've seen in the game that has the angled little sights on the front of the turret. Those are very hard to create, but this man has done it. Long 75mm gun, just a little bit larger hull than that of the Panzer III. This one was the actual workhorse and one of the most common tanks you would face during mid to late war. And yeah, it was a very heavily used tank. Pretty well liked by the crew, despite not being the most well protected or anything. It was very powerful nonetheless. But of course, it was never powerful enough as like something like a Tiger, so it did eventually also get replaced in the eyes of Hitler. So moving on, we're gonna go to the Sd.Kfz 234-2 Puma. So this was actually should be like a slash in the name, but due to how the naming conventions work in Sprockets, that like is not possible to be used. We got this pretty much wheeled tank here, the little like cheat to make the track more or less disappear. And we are driving on road wheels, which is actually very, very cool to see that happen. And I can't wait to see this thing with actual wheels in the future when that actually is released in a couple of years. But yeah, it's a very unique design. It was actually meant to be a scout car, and it came with many modifications. And this is the second modification, featuring a 50mm gun, similar to that on the Panzer III. So it is actually very powerful despite its low weight. And it was actually definitely capable of taking out tanks. But we also have the later variant Dash 4 with a long 75mm in a open top turret. And it's actually very cool to see how this turret was made. And it's actually a fixed turret, so you can't like rotate it horizontally either. You can only rotate it up and down, so you're gonna have a bit of trouble aiming this one. But since it's really just focused on the aesthetics above all else, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. This one can still get its gun on target at close quarters, or just simply aiming the hull. And other than that, there also was the Dash 3 modification of this vehicle, which had a short 75mm infantry support gun, and the Dash 1, which had a kind of anti-air, anti-ground, like multi-purpose 20mm autocannon in it, and a very fast rotating turret. So, moving on from the Pumas, we are going to Sturmgeschützen. And we actually have two different models made by different curators. So the first one for the F with side skirts has been made by Marder LP. And it's a very solid design here. And it was, well, as it had the side skirts, it was like a different model than the other ones. I considered it unique enough to kind of put it out there separately next to the other ones. This one is quite a bit more mobile than the actual tank. It also feels kind of a bit smaller than the original one. Of course, the original tank being the Panzer III, which they removed the turret off and instead mounted the case made for a 75mm gun. And this was actually one of the most produced tanks of World War II for the Germans. It was produced in way higher numbers than that of the Panzer IV, surprisingly enough. And that's also just because it was so much cheaper, because you didn't have any turret to work with. And here's the LSF, made by, just 1 second, Smirnov. Smirnov went overboard with this one, completing like all sorts of tiny little details. And it's also just a whole different size of design here. So I decided to like put these builds next to each other separately, as they are simply that much different. Well, this one is a little bit oversized. It definitely has way more detail than the other model. And yeah, it's just a very, very nice design overall here. Again, made by 1 second, Smirnov. Going on there, we're going with StuG III G. Back to Mirai LP. This one is simply the 3F with side skirts and 80mm of frontal armor instead of 50. Really nothing too fancy here. It's a really simple design. It has a slightly different mantlet, but other than that, it is pretty much identical. And then lastly we have a Sturmhaubitze 42, which is the 3G, but with a 105mm howitzer instead of the 75mm anti-tank gun, which is mostly for infantry support. It's gonna drop a big HE shell onto the enemy and yeah, bunk some busters, bust some bunkers with it maybe. So yeah, that is it. Again, if you want to know how to install these, they're at the end of the first back video, so the Elite for Germany one has the full install guide. You can find the download link for the pack itself down in the description below, just like any other pack. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.